We got to get you the notes from today's practice here. So first and foremost, I'll just kind of go through some things that I noticed, Steve. Feel free to chime in here where you want.
Yeah.
I thought it was a good day for KJ Hamler, perhaps his best of training camp. He was involved in the passing game more than I had noticed him on any other day prior. And so he might be catching some fire here as he gets a better feel for the passing game and the offensive system. It was a good day for KJ Hamler. And as far as I'm concerned, the top 5 receiver spots, 4 are locked. 1, Tyrell Shavers has a pretty good handle on. If there is a 6th spot, I would put KJ Hamler in that spot right now over some of the other guys.
And that, yeah, that's right.
That's kind of where I sit on it, because all those other guys have not done anything all that impressive. Yeah. Chase Claypool is still sidelined with a toe injury. Justin Shorter joined him today with an undisclosed injury. I mean, those 2 guys got to be on the field. And then everybody else after that has not overly impressed. I might go Andy Isabella next, and unfortunately for Andy, he catches a ball in the slot on a now route, and he tries to juke a defender and cut inside, and backside pursuit, defensive tackle right at the end of the play completely cleaned him out, scraped his leg up really bad to the point where he had to get his leg wrapped because he was bleeding and everything. And
yeah, I mean, I was, for a hot second, you thought, oh my gosh,
we were worried he broke his leg,
compound fracture or something, but it's not. We saw him walking around a little bit later.
Yeah,
don't know the extent of it or how long he's going to be out. It doesn't appear to be.
But they carted him off. He was in some serious pain.
Yeah, and I get it. It looked
like
you
had something like that,
raked
right?
up his shin, and it hurt so bad. That's the worst pain I was ever in on a football field, is getting my shin raked. So he was down, and he was feeling it, but he was up just a little after that, walking around and bandaged though. So depending on the extent of the laceration, we'll have to see what it is.
Defensively, Kyer Elam, A.J. Epinesa with batted passes. Elam's came on a corner blitz. Kingsley Jonathan had a sack. As we know, it was a long list of players not practicing on Sunday. Lyle Collins came back from a knee ailment to practice today. Dawson Knox back from a groin injury to practice today. Daquan Jones had a veteran rest day. I would say the defense had the better of play again today, much like they did on Friday night at the blue and red practice. Offense, again, just looks a little out of sync, just not connecting anything like they were the first 2 or 3 days of camp. They came out like a house on fire, and now these last few days, it's been a little touch and go here, and Josh has been a little off with his accuracy, so they got to get back on track here before they get to the end of the week in the first preseason game.
I'm not concerned at all, but I think one of the things about it is the defense is starting to get a feel for the guys they're playing against, gives them an incredible advantage. Sometimes one-on-one, like an offensive lineman or a corner or whatever, you can get a feel for a one-on-one matchup, and then you start to know these guys really well, and particularly when you've got an experienced guy going against a less experienced guy. You can gain a real advantage. I think you're seeing some of that out here now. The defenders, now that they've had pads on for a while, now they're getting a little knowledge under their belt and a little confidence about the schemes they're running, the techniques they're running. They're starting to fly a little bit, and it's good to see. But I wouldn't put that as a detriment to the offense as much, because they did get out so fast out of the gates offensively. I think that was a little bit of hey, you're good, but you're not that good.
Catch of the day, I'm giving to Dalton Kincaid, who made a falling one-handed grab on a seam shot that went for 30 yards. Josh just put it up for him, and tight coverage on the play, and he just stuck his arm behind the defender and pulled it in as he fell to the ground. Really impressive hands catch there by Kincaid. He's been doing that all camp, though.
He caught it about a foot off the ground. He went down after it and get a one-hander, rolled over with it, and no question he caught it. And it was good coverage. And
it was.
We were talking there while we were watching. We had just got through talking about how long it's going to take for, because I think Keon Coleman's going to be one of those guys where he's going to be open when he's not open. You're going to have to. And the quarterback's really got to trust that if he throws it over there and he looks covered, that the worst that will happen will be an incompletion. But you really expect Keon to just make a play on the guy. That's what Kincaid did. He's got that kind of cachet with Josh. Josh threw that right at the back of the defender. He threw it right at the defender, basically. And Kincaid just came up with it. I mean, it's that easy. And that's not everybody has that kind of rapport with their quarterback, but certainly Kincaid does. Josh like just threw it at the two of them, and Kincaid comes up with a 30-yard gain.
Daequan Hardy, better known as Day to his teammates, his second interception in 3 days. Made a fantastic interception on Friday night in the blue and red practice in the end zone, one-handed on a fade ball to the back corner of the end zone. He made another one here today as he jumped in front of an intended receiver and went the other way with the interception. So Hardy, the 7th-round draft choice, picking up the pace on the defensive side of the ball. We heard Sean McDermott say Hardy was drafted primarily for his return skills, secondarily for his defensive skills. He's been putting his defensive skills on display as of late.
That's big.
And here's the most impressive thing for me, Steve, and you can maybe speak to this better than I can. He goes 5'8.5", 178.
Yeah,
I mean, I saw him. I was like, slot corner. They've had him outside for the last 2 weeks, and he's held his own.
If he's a guy that can can return punts at the NFL level, and he's playing DB like he is, he's going to play for a minute. He's going to be here for a while.
Okay, so here's a scenario that I want to throw past you, okay? Because I just mentioned top 5 receivers right now for this roster are probably Samuel, Shakir, Coleman, Hollins. Those 4 are locks.
I know exactly.
Shavers 5. Okay?
I know exactly where you're going with this. Go ahead.
After that, even more consistent than KJ Hamler has been the tight end Zach Davidson, who, for those who don't know his history, 2 years ago he's an undrafted rookie signing of the Minnesota Vikings. They release him. Bills pick him up, add him to their practice squad 2 years ago in 22. Comes back, signs as a future free agent, comes back in the spring of 23, tears his ACL. Misses all of 2023 on IR, comes back healthy this spring, looks good in the spring, has looked very good here, was probably the best player on the field offensively on Friday in the practice at the stadium. I wanted to know what you think of this. How possible do you think this scenario is? You keep only 5 receivers, but at tight end, you keep Dawson Knox, Dalton Kincaid, Quinton Morris, and Zach Davidson. 5 wide receivers, 4 tight ends, and when you get in the red zone, out comes Davidson, Knox, and Kincaid with Coleman, and off you go. Throw it 10 feet in the air, and one of them's coming down with it.
That's right. That's great, but I don't know that you'll get enough red zone snaps to make decisions like that.
And I will tell you,
out of the gate.
Zach Davidson plays on special teams.
But I'll say that, yes, that's right. But also this, if you're sitting there and Joe Brady says, I don't know, man, I think 12 personnel is our best option. We'll put whoever you want out there. I like the tight ends a lot. And that means he likes them better than Shakir and Samuel, better than Shakir and Coleman and Samuel, either one of those. You got to take one of those guys, got to sit down. Then you go 12, and it's Kincaid, Knox, or Kincaid, Davison, or whatever you say. That's a big decision. I don't know if that's.
It is a big decision. I would put the chances of it probably 30-70.
Yeah.
Because I don't think Davidson's going to push Morris off the roster. He does too many things for them. Special teams wise,
that
blocking
may answer
wise.
your question right there.
Well, but I'm telling you, I mean, and look, we got 3 preseason games to still play. A lot can change between now and then. But if none of these other receivers on the back end of the roster start doing something,
right,
I think you got to think long and hard about that as an option because Davidson has been fantastic. Yeah. And again, we're talking about a guy who goes 6'7", 251, and he runs like a deer. I mean, usually players that are that long when they're running routes, they look a little gangly. He is smooth like butter when he's running out there. For a 6'7" guy, he's very athletic.
Yeah. He's got some.
You can't put him on the practice squad.
Yeah.
Someone's taking that guy.
Yeah, I would
I don't
agree.
see how you do that.
But that's a big question. If you go 4 tight ends, and maybe on a week-to-week basis you drop it to 3 and keep an extra wide out up or call an extra wide out up off the practice
squad. You can put 3 on the practice squad if you want. You got 16 spots.
Right. So that's a possibility. And then if you go 10, if you go 4 running backs, 10 O-linemen, 6 wideouts.
Are you going 6 wideouts?
5 wideouts.
You got to rob from somewhere.
5 wideouts, that's 19, and you got to get to 20s. Yeah, three quarterbacks. That gives you an extra spot or two.
Yeah, because the one thing Davidson is more like a Kincaid type tight end. He's not.
Yes.
I mean, you can have him line up and block, but that's not his forte.
You're not going to run a power trade.
That's not his forte, and that's why I think Morris is probably safe because he does a lot of that dirty work with Knox. Here's the other thing to think about too: Kansas City led the league in 13 personnel last year in terms of personnel usage. 13 personnel, and they used it very effectively. Saw some of that on Friday at practice at Highmark.
Yeah, you're going to see.
Now, granted,
it
was during a run period, but
yeah.
Still,
I mean, yardage and stuff. But I wouldn't. This is a team that is. I really believe it's going to be a team that is perfectly happy handing the ball off in just about any down and distance, whether they're in 13 personnel or not.
Yeah.
And certainly, you put 13 personnel and condense the formation. It's
but with guys like
possibility.
And the other thing too is with guys like Kincaid and Davidson on the field in 13 personnel.
Yes, they may.
Now you have
twice.
options. You can leak people out.
You can break the formation, and it's all condensed. And we all know what we're talking about. We're talking about short yardage goal line, where you're on your opponent's 35-yard line. You got a third or a fourth and one, and you got three tight ends in there, and the third tight end is an offensive lineman.
Right.
Those guys are in there. They're packed out, and you got a running back, whatever, and they're all right there at the line of scrimmage. And all of a sudden, Josh picks his head up, says something, backs out. Kincaid and the other dude, Davidson, split out.
Yeah.
And you ain't got a corner on the field. You got a problem.
Yeah.
That's a big problem.
We also got an early tell as to who the sixth offensive lineman will be this year in heavy formations. Last year, as we know, it was David Edwards, but he is now the starting left guard. This year, it appears the sixth offensive lineman will be Alec Anderson. So
I like that choice.
So we'll see if that continues to hold true through the preseason, but we saw that on Friday as well.
You know how I feel about all this, but Alec Anderson seems to be one of those guys that he's quite willing to step into the fray.
Yeah, he doesn't care. He's not afraid of anything.
So he did that today when Andy Isabella got raked.
He was first on the scene to let Branson Dean know that's not acceptable.
Yeah.
It got heated there for a little bit.
Yeah.
Extended.
That was the most that was as hot as I've ever seen Josh.
Yeah.
On the practice field. He was yelling at Bobby Babich. Babich was yelling back at him. Bobby was yelling back, and they were like 10 feet apart. It was a heated exchange. Now they're probably over there having lunch together and laughing, but they were ticked.
It was interesting to see how long the ire lasted.
Yeah. Well, they started the next period, and there was another shoving match right on the first play of the next period. But Josh was zero happy, man. He was walking over there, and so that was kind of the unique moment in practice today. Defense got Josh ticked, to where he was livid.
We also had news before practice. Defensive coordinator Bobby Babich addressed the media, and I asked him how the call-it periods of practice have gone thus far for him. This is when Coach McDermott lets the two coordinators call plays in certain team sessions of practice. They did it on Friday. I think they did some yesterday. They did some again today. And Coach Babich said he's appreciative of the opportunities where he gets to call the plays. He said that the opportunities, for the most part, went well. They haven't been perfect, but he is welcoming the reps. He also said he reviews the call-it periods with McDermott at some point after practice later in the day. After that, though, he did reveal that he is going to be up in the coach's booth on game days. Now, to me, that's a little bit of a tell, Steve. Previously, he's been on the sidelines in his coaching tenure with the Bills. Now he's going upstairs, and I realize he's the defensive coordinator. And knowing Sean can't be upstairs to be eyes for the defense, I guess it makes sense from that standpoint. But when we asked him why he's decided to go up in the coach's booth, he said, "Have you seen me on the sidelines? Like he's a lunatic.
He can't function."
But I think this is also a step toward him calling the plays. I mean, I guess we'll see when the decision is finally made, presumably after a couple of preseason games. Yeah. But to me, this could be a step. Because the other reason a coordinator goes upstairs is to see the field better so he can make better calls. And I wonder
Absolutely.
if that is part of this decision as well. You would have to
Absolutely.
think it is.
Yeah, absolutely. And plus, you never know if Sean, for some reason, needs a minute and he doesn't want to call plays for like one series. Babich doesn't want to be on the sidelines to do that. It's a concession to that. But it's also, I mean, it's just typical. I think it'll probably help Bob Babich stay at the thought level he wants to. Sometimes when you're like the guy that Bobby Babich is, and we saw Chad Hall as a wide receiver coach here a couple of years ago, you get these coaches that are towel wavers and they're on the field, they're talking to their guys and they're really animated, they're passionate about it, and they lose their minds once in a while. Being up in the booth keeps you from doing that, and it keeps you above the game, so you don't get ticked at the conversation down
sucked
there.
into the fray.
Right, you don't get sucked into it. And as a coordinator, you need to be that. And I think I think for Bobby, this is a concession, so I got to do that. Even if he's not comfortable up there and he'd rather be on the sidelines, I think he knows he's got to be in a spot where he can stay above the fray. It's going to be an adjustment for him, I bet you, though. He's really going to. I think at first he's not going to like it because he has been so engaged with his players one-on-one, face-to-face on the sidelines.